tired of the same old bar scene every Friday night? Well, Jerry Wade and Company recently opened a brand new microbrewery in downtown Madison. Come with me as I check out Mad Paddle Brewery to see if it could be the new hangout for you.
My name is Jerry Wade. I'm the entrepreneur behind Mad Paddle Fresh Beer Microbrewery.
What made you want to start a brewery in Madison, of all places?
I'd never been to Madison, Indiana prior to about 16 months ago.
Really?
Yes, I'm from Indianapolis, went to high school in Newcastle, went to college at Ball State, got marooned in Minnesota for about 36 years, and decided I wanted to move back to the state of Indiana, find a small town, buy a small building on the main street of that town, and build a little loft that I could live in retirement. So I came to Madison, Indiana, never having been here, and discovered there were a lot of commercial buildings for sale. One of the buildings for sale is actually on the wall over here. It's called the Griner Madison Brewing Company Brewing Building. So as I researched it, I found that that building is the oldest still standing brewery building in the state of Indiana.
Dang.
I then discovered that Madison, Indiana is the third oldest brewing city in Indiana, 1823, first started by Jacob Salmon on that very site. So then as I roamed around town, met some people, I started to hear things like, you know, Madison really could use a microbrewery. People have been talking about it for years. So a town I came to called Madison, Indiana to retire and kind of kick back, what I then decided to do was renovate a building and be a real estate developer. I'm not working as a job, but I'm really a real estate developer and a project manager on this building, bringing a microbrewery to Madison. So that's how it all started. Prior to that, I was a Coors Light drinker.
I didn't even know any of that stuff about Madison.
Nor did anyone else.
Yeah.
So that was fascinating to me, that me, an outsider who had never been to Madison, Indiana, all of a sudden I've written kind of the history book on Madison brewing. And that's part of what's listed on our lights in the other part of the room up here. We've taken our old garage door, which has glass panels. We cut those panels in half, and we have 18 panels on that wall from 1823 to 2018 that tells the history of brewing in Madison, Indiana. We have what's called a team of beer ambassadors. So a beer ambassador is somebody that loves Mad Paddle, loves the fact that I'm developing a microbrewery in Madison, Indiana, and I met people all summer long at the various festivals that would say, hey Jerry, what can we do to help? We want to see a microbrewery succeed in Madison. We want to see you succeed. What can we do? And what I shared with them is the number one challenge in any business is people, finding good people. The number one challenge in any food and beverage business is people. It's a high turnover, high challenge business to find employees in the food and beverage industry. So as I met my volunteers at festivals that were kind of in a age bracket, let's call it 30 to 65 years old, I said, how about this? You love Mad Paddle, you love helping us at this festival. How would you like to work 1 to 2 shifts a month as a beer ambassador? Jerry, what's a beer ambassador? Well, that's somebody that stands behind the bar and serves people beer and is excited about Mad Paddle. And it's not a job, this is like fun, you being at Mad Paddle working a 4 to 5 hour shift. So out of 60 volunteers that we had at the Chautauqua Festival, we've ended up with about 20 beer ambassadors who across the month work part-time here at Mad Paddle.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Are they all local?
Well, ironically, they're not all local. One of our beer ambassadors is driving from Seymour, Indiana every week to work his 1 shift per week. And what Chad tells me, he said, Jerry, the highlight of my week is when I get to drive from Seymour to Madison and come work my shift at Mad Paddle Fresh Beer Microbrewery. Not only are our beer ambassadors traveling long distances, we have over 4,000 Facebook followers, and we just opened 7 weeks ago. About 20 to 25% of our customers every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday are not from Madison. They are from Kentucky. They are from Ohio. We've had people drive down from southern Michigan to check out Mad Paddle. So constantly we have people coming to Madison that would not have come here otherwise to check out this new microbrewery.
What do you think makes Mad Paddle so appealing to these people? What makes you unique?
Well, the first thing that makes us unique is we're the first microbrewery in Madison, Indiana. The second thing is it's been 100 years. So it was the 100-year anniversary. It was 1918 was the last year that beer was brewed on a production scale. So this town was kind of ripe for a microbrewery to hit town, and being first always helps. Number two is, as you can tell from our atmosphere, we've built kind of a unique vibe here at Mad Paddle. So people are excited to come here. Another thing that's important is, as a non-craft beer person, as more of an entrepreneur and an investor, I view the business differently than, let's say, some home brewers or some brewers that were starting a microbrewery. When breweries are started by that group, it's all about the beer, number one. It's all about the beer, number two. And it's all about the beer, number three. And then things like atmosphere and social media marketing and the business plan are sometimes a distant third, fourth, or fifth. So what we've designed here at Mad Paddle is something that's very customer-centric. We're building a destination that you'll want to come to where there's going to be something on tap that you're going to want to drink. The challenge that I found is that I would go out to microbreweries as a Coors Light regular domestic beer drinker, and I would say, hey, what do you have on tap that's kind of like that? What do you have for me? And 9 times out of 10 at those breweries that are started by beer guys, the answer would be, oh, we really don't do that. Oh, okay, do you have, can I get, no, we really don't do it. Try this Kolsch, try this type of beer. And a lot of the times, I wouldn't like it. And so when we started Mad Paddle, our number one goal was for us to have a lineup of beers, both beers that we produce and guest beers that are called approachable. So that when you walk in, you might tell me, a lot of females tell us, I don't like craft beer. And then they say, what do you have for me? Do you have some wine? Well, we actually don't have wine, but we have a mead. What's a mead? A mead is the world's a mead is the world's oldest drink. Good. 7,000 years old is how old mead is. Mead's made out of honey. The phrase honeymoon, when somebody goes on their honeymoon, mead was what was consumed during the honeymoon when somebody got married, and that's where the phrase honeymoon comes from.
Well, I didn't know that.
So we have a mead on tap called Zombie Killer from Bee Nectar Brewery. That's not from Mad Paddle, it's from Bee Nectar Meadery, actually, that if we don't have that mead on tap, if we don't have Zombie Killer on tap, and you come in and you love Zombie Killer, you're upset. Yeah. So we had that go off tap one time. We're never going to let that happen again.
Really?
We always have an extra keg of Zombie Killer mead. Another popular beer for us is Rheingeist Bubbles. It's a cidery beer. Females love Rheingeist Bubbles. So that led us to our most recent beer that we brewed in-house, Bon Ton Ruby Red. It's an herb spice beer. It's made out of honey, tart cherry, and hibiscus. So now when somebody comes in, typically a female, and says, hey, what do you have for me? That's not a craft beer. I don't like hoppy stuff. And we've got a mead, we've got some cider, and we've got our new herb spice Bon Ton Ruby Red beer. Try this. Oh, that's really good. So they're not expecting that when they come in. A lot of times, if it's a married couple, one of the two people is maybe not going to find what they're looking for when they go to a microbrewery. Same thing when you go to a winery. So and I'm going to be stereotypical here, if a married couple goes out, it's typically going to be the female that wants to go to the winery, and they're going to drag the guy along. Yeah. And when the guy says, hey, what do you have for me? Do you have a beer? The answer is usually going to be, no, we're a winery. See? Yeah. So our answer is, when you say, what do you have for me? We've got a wide lineup for you.
Yeah. And what would be your favorite flavor so far that you've produced from Mad Paddle?
Wow, that's a tough question. We're on our 6th or 7th recipe right now. We had one 4 weeks ago called Some Came Hopping Kiwi Hazy IPA. That was pretty tasty with the kiwi in it. And I actually, being a kind of more of a Coors Light drinker, domestic, not a craft beer hop guy, I kind of like this new Bon Ton Ruby Red as well. I also like our dark chocolate grinder Triple X. So that was something we brewed because I fell in love with another beer at the VB Wine Festival called Kitten Slumber Party. Cool name. People kept buying it at the 36 beers that were at VB Wine Fest. I took a sip on it and said, God, that's really tasty. It's chocolatey. It's kind of like drinking some dessert. So I told my brewer, I said, hey, Caleb, what can we do? Can we brew something chocolate that could compete with that?
Chocolate beer. I might have to try that. Why did you choose the name Mad Paddle?
Mad Paddle, the name. Part one is Mad for Madison. So that's where that comes from, and so that's answer number one. The paddle part is usually what trips people up. Yeah. We're here on the water, you know, paddle boats had paddles, paddle in the water, so many people think that the paddle has something to do with the water. Or when you're making beer, there is a paddle that you stir the mash with. So it could have been a beer paddle. It's none of those things. We're here at the former Irwin feed mill, which then became the Lamson feed mill, that somebody with you here today says she used to come to back in the day, okay? So at a feed mill, there's corn and there's grains that are getting milled and crushed that can be turned into things like beer. So we have a grain elevator here, which has a series of paddles in it. And those paddles transport the grain from the basement where there's a grinder all the way up to the top of the building where the grain was distributed down a bunch of chutes. So MAD for Madison, P for paddle, and the paddle is a grain paddle that's in our grain elevator back there.
What challenges did you run into creating this brewery here in Madison? Were there any? Any big challenges?
There are always challenges in starting any business. And there are often big challenges. And sometimes the challenges are not what you thought they were going to be. They come from somewhere else. I thought our biggest challenge was going to be getting our brewing permit approved by the federal government, what's called the TTB. That actually ended up being a simple process. It's supposed to last maybe 3 months. It lasted under 3 months for us. We got our brewing permit last August, okay? But we didn't open till December. So I thought when I got that brewing permit, by the time we got that brewing permit, we'd be able to get our patio open and get things open and going in the building. That was not the case. We ran into massive problems locally with zoning ordinances and at the state of Indiana with this intimidating organization called the Department of Homeland Security. So some might say, what in the heck does DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, have to do with starting a business in Madison, Indiana? At some point in time, I think since 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security absorbed what would be like the building inspector departments in all the states. So to get a building permit and adhere with all the building laws and the fire code laws, etc., you deal with the Department of Homeland Security in Indianapolis, Indiana. And they are not easy to deal with. They're understaffed, they're underpaid, and they're difficult. And so we ran into major problems in getting all the permitting we needed to do in that process. So that added 6 months, a 6-month delay on this project. So I've learned a lot in phase 1, and phase 2 will go a lot smoother.
What does phase 2 entail?
Phase 2, 3, and 4 and future phases of Mad Paddle entail the room next door, which is a beautiful looking beer hall. So that's going to open up sometime this summer. Along with that room is the patio that's already built. So you'll be able to walk in that door over there, come over here to the tap room, or you can go over to the beer hall, walk through the beer hall, past some new bathrooms in the garage, out to the patio. So we're going to have the biggest tap room beer hall, not only in Madison, Indiana, but within, kind of a 50, 60-mile radius. Our patio that we've got is the largest outdoor seating in Madison, Indiana, as far as a patio. So that's the next phase for this summer. After that happens, the room right above us is going to be an event room. And a question we get right now is people will call on the phone and say, hey, do you got the Kentucky game on? Some people will walk in and say, hey, I see you got the TV screen up there. Can we get the game on? The answer to that is no. We are not a sports bar. We're not trying to create a sports bar vibe. You'll notice around here we have games. So somebody suggested that we get games. What happened immediately, we went out and bought a bunch of games. We set them on the tables and we set them in the windows. People immediately came in that are kind of craft beer people or like to go to microbreweries. They see the games, they grab the box, they start playing the games. So, games and the social aspect of microbreweries is what's cool. We're not trying to be a sports bar. That said, the room above for that person that wants to come to a microbrewery, wishes the game was on, is going to be able to walk upstairs. There'll be screens on the walls. The games will be on. There'll be shuffleboard and darts up there. That room will also be available as an event room space as well.
I've greatly enjoyed talking with you, and I thank you very much for your time, Jerry.
Thanks for the opportunity to be interviewed.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mad About Madison. I'm Katie Dudzik, and until next time. I'm just